Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelvin Coleman. I'm the Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and we're so thrilled to host this webinar today with our good friends at Generali, and certainly hearing from Malcolm, in a few minutes is going to be the highlight of this webinar, protecting customer data. I just want to quickly thank our signature sponsor, Trend Micro, and of course our affiliate sponsor, Generali Global Assistance, who we have such a great relationship with, and look forward to continuing that relationship in 2021. And certainly our friends, around the spectrum who are with us here today. We're really excited to have you. With that, I'm just going to give you a brief overview for those who may not be familiar with the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Our purpose, we have three general purposes, right? To convene the partners who recognize strength in security collective. And you see it there, educating individuals and organizations, and certainly amplifying collective efforts to increase cybersecurity awareness. You can find more information on us at staysafeonline.org. Of course, you can find us at Twitter at staysafeonline. We'd be very excited to hear from you so that we can partner as we go into 2021. I don't think there's any mistake, and I'm quite sure Malcolm is going to enhance this message that customer data, security, and privacy is so very important today, as important as it has ever been. And so really looking forward to engaging with all of you in this new year. Now, like any good leader, I'm going to step aside and let the subject matter expert, Malcolm, come on and give us his views on some of these things. So Malcolm, my friend, I want to turn it right over to you. You're on mute.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear, Malcolm. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My name is Malcolm Webb. I'm a team lead on the Identity and Cyber Protection Services team at Generali. And so we're here to talk about protecting customer data. And it's very critical, as Kelvin was saying. We kind of, here in the US, we think of the right to privacy as being a fundamental right. And so it's worth asking the question, how can we ensure that customer data is kept private? Next slide, please. Well, in fact, it's actually becoming more difficult to keep data private. Our data privacy is actually disappearing. We used to be able to keep our info private. Now that's no longer the case. In the past, we had some degree of personal anonymity, but if you look at some of what's happening in the Capitol right now, with a lot of these people who attended the Capitol protest, they believed that they were anonymous. They were in a large crowd. There were a lot of people there, but what's happening is with facial recognition software, people's cell phone cameras, there's so much content and data and pictures of them out there that they're actually not as anonymous as they thought. And so they don't really have the privacy that they expected. If you look at things like our purchasing history, used to be that you would pay for things with cash, which is close to untraceable. When you would go in to talk to a merchant that you were buying from, the only person who would maybe know who you were would be the sales attendant that you spoke to. But now with electronic payments, you're paying electronically. Everything that you buy is trackable and traceable. Your purchase history is stored. And every time you make a purchase online, you actually have to provide a lot of your personal information to the merchant. You have to give your name, your email address, your phone number, credit card information, and all of that's stored. So it's very different from the way it used to be. If you look at things like your personal activities, your interests, the things that you do, the things that you like to do, the places that you go, all of that is now tracked by your cell phone. Your interests are tracked by via search engine logs, social networking logs. And so you don't really have the same level of privacy that you did in the past. If you look at even your home and your car, the privacy is evaporating there as well. If you look at things like Alexa and smart TVs, they're basically always on, listening in your home, observing what's going on. And even the car, which you would think would be pretty private, it's not as private as you would think. There's actually a story that I saw in December on the NBCnews.com website about a cold case. Someone had been murdered, and the case had been cold for 2 years. They had no DNA evidence, no suspects. They had no idea who could have been responsible for the crime. And one of the detectives actually read an article about forensic analysis of car data. So they actually went back to the victim's vehicle, which was a 2016 pickup truck, and they were able to retrieve from the car time-stamped audio messages, basically audio that had the voice of the murderer requesting a particular song using the hands-free system in the pickup truck. And so they took that audio out and were able to identify the person who was speaking, and they actually charged that person based on this data that was 2 years old that was actually stored in the car. And that's not unusual. It turns out that cars are actually capturing a lot of data about us that we may not even realize. They can track things like how many people are in the car. Every time you sync your phone to the car, the car will actually go and grab data off the phone, things like your contacts, other information. And it's not always clear. It's not even always made aware to people that that's what's happening. And it's kind of a gray area because there aren't any federal laws currently that regulate how that data is handled. And for example, if someone gets into your car, but it's not their car, but they have their phone may actually be providing some data to the car. There have been cases where they've looked at used cars that are at the dealership, they've already been sold, and you can actually still retrieve data from the people who previously owned those cars because they sync their phone to the car and they use Bluetooth to attach their phone to the car so they could play music and do other things. And so the key is that the amount of data that's out there is kind of exploding. There's so much data out there that was previously not available, and it's very difficult for the regulations and also for companies to stay abreast of how they should actually handle all that data. And so you may think that maybe the bathroom is still off limits. That might be one area where we do still have some privacy. If you could, next slide. They're tracking us there as well. If you look at bathroom technology, they have smart bathroom mirrors now that run Android. They have a camera in there. The camera actually can recognize whoever comes in the bathroom and provide a customized experience for them. But that means that there's a camera there watching you when you're in the bathroom as well. So same thing with the smart toilet. They do have a toilet that has Alexa built in, and not sure why you need to have Alexa in your toilet, but it's there, it's out there, and it'll be available. Next slide, please. So why is data privacy being eliminated? Privacy is something that we generally value, but it is vanishing. And so the key is it's basically two major reasons. Advertisers and other information seekers are willing to pay for the data. Previously, it was very difficult to actually store a lot of this data. But the cost of storage is coming down. The tools to actually manage the data are getting much easier to use, much more accessible. And also, information sharing has kind of become much more widespread. Data aggregators are very prevalent now, and basically these are companies that go and they actually purchase different pieces of data. So they may purchase this element of data from one provider, another element of data from another provider, and what they'll do is they'll actually combine all these different pieces of data to create a very robust advertising profile that can be sold. And so even though we may not realize it, all of us have profiles with these different aggregators that have a lot of our personal data that is actually being stored and sold and resold. And so that's a big element as well. Now, although this kind of could seem a little sinister, it turns out that most consumers are very willing to trade data privacy for convenience. If you look at things like cell phones, I mean, people love cell phones. Social media, search engines, those are tremendous tools that actually improve the quality of our lives, even though we're giving up some privacy. And so it turns out that safety.com did a December 2020 survey of 1,000 US residents. Turns out that 2 out of 3 people don't care if their smart devices are recording, which surprised me, but it makes sense. I mean, those devices are flying off the shelves, and people are more than willing to make that trade, to trade data privacy for convenience. And a couple other examples, I mean, LinkedIn is the one that comes to mind first for me. I remember when people's Rolodex was something that was a treasured possession, and you'd actually take your Rolodex from job to job, and they called it taking your Rolodex to your next job. And so people actually valued their personal network, and they valued keeping it private so that they were the only ones that knew about their personal network. But with LinkedIn, your personal network is actually public. Everyone can see it, and everyone feels that it's worth the trade to give up the privacy of that network in exchange for the convenience of being plugged into LinkedIn. And the same thing is true of like a smart TV. I mean, I'm very privacy conscious. I had to break down and get a smart TV. I mean, it's just, yes, it's true. Now I know that all my viewing habits are being tracked. Everything that I click on the screen is being tracked, but it's worth it because I have tremendous selection now. I have virtually unlimited content, and so it's worth that trade to me. Next slide, please. So how does that relate to tracking information? If people are comfortable giving up their privacy, does that mean that you don't need to be concerned necessarily with keeping their information private? Well, although people are comfortable giving up a lot of information, and they will trade privacy for convenience, they are concerned still with certain types of personal information. And these are the types that the laws that are on the books really insist that you pay closer attention to. And the big key is with what's known as sensitive personal identifying information. It refers to information, as it says, sensitive personal information is defined as information that, if lost, compromised, or disclosed, could result in substantial harm, embarrassment, inconvenience, or unfairness to an individual. And so in general, sensitive PII is any information that could be used by criminals. And so the key is not all personal data is sensitive personal information. So for example, Walmart is an example of a company that is being very aggressive with data mining and data marketing. If I go to Walmart, I sometimes shop in the store, sometimes I shop online. But if I go to walmart.com, they actually have my entire purchase history. Everything that I bought in the store shows up in my purchase history. Even if I use different credit cards, even if I shopped at different Walmarts, everything that I bought is at Walmart. And so that is a little sinister, but it doesn't really harm me. I mean, when I go to Walmart, every time I go to the store, I always buy peanut butter cookies. They have these peanut butter cookies that I really like. And so it doesn't really harm me for anyone to know that I buy the peanut butter cookies. Now Walmart knows I like peanut butter cookies, so maybe they'll advertise some peanut butter cookies to me. They can sell that data to a peanut butter cookie company. Maybe they'll give me some coupons or something. Maybe a weight loss company will try and contact me because they can see that I'm eating too many peanut butter cookies. But no one's they can't scam me. There's not going to be any identity theft as a result of that data being out there. So that's not sensitive PII. Same thing with like a smart TV, my viewing habits. It doesn't matter. I mean, what I watch is not going to be used to commit identity theft. And that's a little different though, because with a smart TV, there's also billing information in there, stored somewhere. And so like when I go to buy or rent a movie, they use my billing information. So that would be PII. If someone had my billing information, they could use that. Next slide, please. So sensitive PII can include things like social security number, date of birth, driver's license, the information that you see there. One that people may not think of as being sensitive PII is email. Email is actually very critical. And the thing about email is that your email address is widely distributed. You have to provide that if you want to look at certain types of content. When you register for a lot of websites, they require an email. And of course, everyone wants it because they want to be able to market to you, send you emails. But that means that that very critical piece of your PII is actually out there and very widely available, very widely distributed. And so the key with these items is that they can be used to commit various types of identity theft. The most common form of identity theft is where someone actually uses your PII to pretend to be you. And when they're pretending to be you, they then steal your money. So that would be like a bank account takeover. If I have enough PII, I can probably call your bank and get into the account and move money around. So let's say that an identity thief has your social security number and your mother's maiden name. They could potentially call your bank and say, oh, I've lost my ATM card and I'd like to get another card, or I'd like to change the password on the website because I'm worried someone might have it. And the person on the other end of the phone will say, well, let me just verify your identity. Can you give me the last 4 of your social? They have your social security number, they can provide that. And then if they say, can I get your mother's maiden name? Something you had to provide when you opened the account. If they have that information, they can provide that, and then the person on the other end of the phone has no way of knowing that it's not you. And so they can then go in and steal the money in the account. Another common form of identity theft that you can do with this type of information is what's known as an imposter scam. That's identity fraud, technically. That's where, since you have someone's personal information, you're able to convince them that you are some type of official figure. Maybe a government official, someone from the IRS, someone from Social Security Administration, maybe a police officer. And if you have enough of someone's personal information, they can sometimes be convinced that you are an official representative, and then the scam is you try and then get them to actually give you their money. And this is actually one of the more common types of identity theft. According to the FTC's 2019 data book, 20% of all identity theft is this type of imposter scam. It's the second most common form of identity theft. And then the final one that most people think about, but which isn't as common, is using this personal information to get a third party to give money. So for example, if you use the personal information to apply for a loan, something like that, or if maybe a cell phone account takeover. You call the person's cell phone provider, say, oh, my phone was stolen. I'd like to order a new phone. And they say, okay, let me just verify your identity. You provide some personal information. They're convinced that it's you, and so then they order 4 iPhones to be shipped to a location, and it goes on your bill. So these are the kinds of personal information that you'd be concerned with. Next slide, please. So as a business owner, the key here is you want to think about the information that you're collecting from customers. If you collect it, you must protect it. And data collection is not a bad thing. It's actually a business necessity in today's world. All your competitors are collecting data. If you collect data about your customers, you can provide better service, provide better products. And so it makes sense to actually capture data. But the key is, if you capture a customer's data, then you do need to actually take some extra precautions, and there are additional considerations. In particular, you want to be focused on protecting that data. You also need to reduce the risk of a potential data breach. If your company systems are breached and someone gets in and steals a lot of information, if it's your company information, that's damaging, but you can take corrective action, you can recover from that. You can maybe change passwords, move money, or change account numbers, things like that. There are things you can do. But if your customer's information is compromised, that trust may not be repairable in the short term. And so it's a larger issue. In addition, there are various consumer privacy protection regulations, such as GDPR and CCPA, which we'll talk about on some of the upcoming slides. You want to make sure that you're transparent in the marketplace in terms of letting customers know upfront what information you're collecting and what your practices will be, how you'll use it, and how long you'll keep it, those kinds of things. And then a big thing is you just want to be mindful of selling and sharing customer data, because a big, like we talked about earlier, a big risk area is this whole concept of sharing data. If a company that you do business with, that you're providing information to, if you share your customers' data with that company, you need to have assurances. You need to be very confident that they will take care of the data the same way that you would. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some of the privacy laws. Now, the privacy laws in many cases are kind of catching up with all the novel ways that consumer data is being captured. There's, again, so much data out there, and the privacy laws are kind of, they're in a sense, they're behind in many ways. But the EU has made great progress on this, and the privacy law that they've put in place, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, is really being watched around the world as kind of the model for where the privacy laws need to go. Because the key is that with all this data out there, all this data being captured, data that you never even imagined would be captured is now being captured. Things like your health is captured on smartwatches and Fitbits, and all that data. When privacy laws were created many years ago, they had no idea that that would be something that people would be giving up in exchange for various convenience features. And so the idea behind the GDPR is that they want to kind of give some of the control back to consumers over their personal data, including the right to have the data deleted. It has requirements related to the processing of personal data of any consumer residing in the EU. And so the key here is that this is a very broad law that affects everyone all over the world. Even if you don't reside in the EU or your business has no nexus in the EU, you're still affected by the GDPR. You can still be sued by a consumer in the EU if you don't abide by the terms of the GDPR. And that's actually happened with several of the major tech companies. They've been sued because they haven't abided by the terms of the GDPR, even though they may not have offices in various EU countries. The key with the GDPR is that a business must clearly disclose any data collection, declare the lawful basis and the purpose for the data processing, and state how long the data is being retained and if it's shared with any third parties. So what they're trying to do is address a lot of the issues that we've been talking about with this law. And so the key for us is that it does actually apply, even if you don't reside in the EU, even if your business isn't in the EU. If someone from the EU comes to your website and registers for a newsletter or buys a product or anything like that, they're covered by the GDPR. And so you need to make sure that you have the mechanisms in place to destroy their data, for example. If they were to contact you and say, hey, please destroy my data, you have to be able to do that under the terms of the GDPR. Now in the US, we are kind of playing catch up. We do have the Privacy Act of 1974, which has been amended. It's been updated several times. And we also have the HIPAA laws for health-related data and PCI DSS for credit card data. There are privacy laws in the US, but many of them are not, they're not current in terms of the amount of data that's being captured, the types of data that's being captured, all the different ways that data is now being captured. And the best example that I saw was that there was a UC Berkeley study that they did. They actually examined, I think it was 15,000 Americans. And what they did was they looked at whether or not these people were actually being protected by the HIPAA laws. And what they found is that if you look at the technologies that are out there, things like smartwatches, Fitbits, all the different types of health monitoring data that's out there available for sale in many cases, and they applied artificial intelligence to this data, they were actually able to violate the HIPAA laws in the sense that they were able to determine what the health of various individuals was just by going and accessing publicly available data and then applying AI. And so what that means is that, and what they actually concluded in this study, is that the HIPAA laws need to be updated because they're actually no longer effective at doing what they were originally intended to do, because there are so many different kinds of data that are out there. There's so much information that someone can go and access and then apply technology to actually kind of reverse engineer someone's health. And they said that even though they could do this, this is technically not a violation of HIPAA, because HIPAA only applies in certain situations and to certain types of data. And so, for example, tech companies are not bound by HIPAA if they're going and getting the data in certain fashions. And so those laws are basically in the process of being updated. And so the first step is what's known as the California Consumer Privacy Act. This is a California law that's being closely watched by other states, because it's kind of like the US's first stab at trying to address some of these privacy considerations. And so the idea here is that it's very similar to the GDPR, and they actually kind of model parts of it after GDPR. It's a state statute that's just intended to enhance consumer privacy rights. It ensures that companies who collect data are held responsible for any breach or misuse. And so what that means is that if a California consumer is a victim of a data breach, they have the right to sue the company that had their data breached. which is a big thing. And so the key again with this is that even if you're not located in California, if a California consumer comes to your website, becomes a customer, they're covered by the California Consumer Privacy Act. And if they're a victim of a data breach because of some information, it could be something as simple as, let's say they came to your website and you gathered their email address. You said, would you like to get a copy of our newsletter? Or you had them set up a password. And then your systems got breached. They have the right to sue you for exposing that information. So those are the key privacy laws to keep in mind as the regulatory environment evolves. Next slide, please. So how do you mitigate this risk as a business owner? And there are basically three fronts that you want to think about. There's the personal front, which we'll talk about. Then your business, and then customer data. You need to think about all three of these because there are different considerations, and we'll go through them one by one. So talking about personal data security first. The key here is that you are your business. If you personally become a victim of identity theft, the effect on your business could be catastrophic. Because with identity theft, that means that someone can impersonate you. So they could potentially impersonate you as the owner of your business. Not to mention any financial repercussions. If they commit identity theft and it affects your credit score, for example, would that affect the ability of your business to borrow or to survive? So thinking about mitigating your personal risk, one of the most important things is that you want to maintain a clear separation of business and personal accounts. This is really important. Many times I see that if I'm dealing with a business owner, their business address is ownersname@gmail.com. And that's the same as their personal address. So the key is if your personal address is the same as your business address, that means you're putting your business address out there as often as your personal address. So if you go to buy something at an e-commerce site and you use your personal address, if that's the same as your business address, you're putting your business address out there as much as your personal address. So it's at risk. It's more at risk. You don't really want to have your business address sitting in the database of all the e-commerce companies that you made personal purchases from. Because what if one of them gets breached? You want to keep it separate. Maintaining strong password security. Extremely important. The password is the most important thing that you have in terms of keeping a system secure. It's like the key, the master key that will get you into various systems. And so password security means basically, first, you want to use unique passwords for all your accounts. This is sometimes difficult and it can be onerous because we have a lot of passwords. But the thing about your password is that if all your passwords are the same, then if any one of those passwords is compromised, all of them are compromised. So like, let's say you have a password for your Amazon account. Amazon gets breached. Part of what's breached is your password. If that password in Amazon is the same as your password at other sites, all of those sites have been compromised. And in fact, when identity thieves go and buy information that's been compromised, like what happens when there's a data breach is that the information will typically get sold on the dark web. The person who goes into and breaks into a system and steals the information, they don't usually use that themselves. What they'll do is they'll turn around and sell it on the dark web. The identity thieves that are buying that information on the dark web, they're looking to buy, the most common thing that they want is a username and password combination or an email and password combination, since many usernames are emails now. And then they have automated tools that they use to actually try that same combination of email and password on many, many, many other sites. Banking sites, retirement account sites, brokerage sites. They're going to just try that everywhere and see if it works. And so if you're one of those people who has all your passwords the same, if any one of your passwords gets breached, all your passwords are at risk. All your accounts are at risk. So password security means having unique passwords. That's very important. Also, you want to have strong passwords. Strong password would be a password that is difficult to guess. You've probably noticed that most of the sites Where they have you set up a password, they're starting to have password requirements now, where they insist that you have certain types of combinations, uppercase, lowercase, special character. The reason they're doing that is to force you to have a strong password, because that adds to your security. If your password is not strong, then it can be guessed. People can look at your personal information and see what's your middle name, what's your mother's name, what's your wife's name, and they'll try that as your password. And in many cases, it would work if there weren't a strong password requirement. So you want to always make sure to have a strong password, even if it's not required. And then the last thing is you want to make sure to change your passwords regularly. That can be one of the most effective things to do, is just to change a password. Like if you find out that a system has been breached where you have an account, if you just change that password, then all of the information that's out there for criminals to buy about that particular account is useless because you changed the password. So changing your password regularly is important also. These other things are useful as well. You want to have multi-factor authentication if you can. Regularly review your financial account statements and your credit report. You just want to look at those, make sure that there isn't anything showing up that you don't know about. Using antivirus software and keeping it updated. Very important, because many of the attacks that I see are related to people whose phone or PC has been compromised. If you have a virus on there that can give bad actors and hackers, that can give them control of your PC, it's very dangerous, because there's a lot of confidential information on there. Things like your social security number. If you have your tax returns on your PC, that could be in there. You have other documents, loan documents, HR documents from me. Anything that has your personal information on it, most of the time it's going to be on your PC. If you look at your cell phone is important, because you don't want someone to be able to intercept your text messages. You don't want someone to maybe intercept your passwords. A lot of people keep their passwords in a password manager on their cell phone. Also, with things like your email, if you have it set up where you can just click right through to your email, that means your password is on that phone somewhere. It's encrypted, but someone could obtain that and try and decrypt it. So you just want to definitely make sure that you have security on those devices. PC, phone, a tablet, any device that you use to access internet resources. You also want to be aware of the privacy policy, terms and conditions, and security patch notes for tools and systems that you use. You want to find out, how is your information being stored? How is it being shared? You just want to be aware of that. For a business owner, I would also recommend thinking about a preemptive fraud alert or credit freeze. Again, just because it's so important, it's tied to your business. And so it's worth adding that extra safeguard. Even if you haven't been a victim of identity theft, a fraud alert can be placed very easily, and it's a pretty strong safeguard. It basically is a note that gets added to your credit file, and it lets anyone who's thinking of extending credit in your name know that you have potentially been a victim of identity theft, and they should contact you. And they'll contact you at a number that you specify. And so what that means is that anytime someone tries to open up credit in your name, you'll get that phone call from the fraud alert. With a fraud alert, a great thing about it is that it doesn't stop you from applying for any credit that you want. When you get that phone call, if it is actually you applying for credit, you just say, yes, it's me, and it'll go through the normal credit approval process. A credit freeze is a little stronger. What it does is it actually prevents any credit request or credit inquiry from going through. So if you are sure that you won't be applying for any personal credit, you don't think that you'll need to get insurance or apply for rent an apartment or anything like that, then a credit freeze could be a good move, because it will prevent everything from going through. The only thing with a credit freeze is that you need to make sure that you keep the PIN that will be provided to you by the credit bureau if you place a freeze, so that you can lift the freeze. With a credit freeze, you do need that PIN in order to lift it. If you lose the PIN, then it can be difficult to sometimes lift the freeze. You'll need to basically verify that you are who you say you are in order to lift the freeze if you misplace that PIN. And then you also may want to think about a comprehensive identity protection service, something that can do some of this monitoring for you. But the key is you just want to kind of be aware of the fact that your personal security, you want to have a higher level of awareness of what's going on with your personal data security. Next slide, please. So what about your business? For your business security, The big difference is that instead of your social security number, your business is tied to your EIN or your DUNS number. Now, with a social security number, there's an assumption of privacy. Your social security number, even though it's widely distributed, it's not public. Your EIN and your DUNS number are actually public. On some government filings, they'll be available. And so someone who's determined can actually find out the social security number for your business. They can find out your EIN, they can find out your DUNS number. And so it becomes even more important to monitor your business credit report. Because if someone can go and find out your DUNS number and they can find out some other information about your business, with a business, much of your personal information is actually published. If someone goes to your website, probably your address is on there, your phone number is on there. So a lot of the information that might be a little harder to get as an individual, as a business, you're actually putting it out there. And so you want to pay closer attention to your accounts, your business account statements, and your business credit report because of the availability of your EIN and DUNS number. With a business, you also want to think about securing your networks, monitoring physical access. Since with a business, with COVID, I mean, a lot of people are working from home now, but with a business, you can be pretty sure that at certain times of day, no one's going to be there. So like Sunday night, probably no one's at the business. So if someone wanted to make a physical intrusion, if they wanted to go and just grab all the hard drives or grab the server, if they know where the servers are, if they want to break in and grab the servers, with a business, they would be able to do that and have a reasonable assumption that no one's going to be there. So you need to think more about controlling physical access. You also want to, again, be very concerned about your password management at a business. Keep the business and personal accounts separate. But you also want to focus now on what I call a multi-layered approach to security. With a business, it's different because you have employees that are there at the location. And so basically, your risk is higher because you have more people that are potentially having access to confidential information or to business data. And so you need to think in terms of not just having a lock on the front door, but every office should have a lock. And then inside the office, the drawers should be locked. And if there's a file cabinet in there, you want to think about who needs access to that file cabinet. It should be locked, and maybe certain people only have access to certain file drawers. You just want to basically regiment the information so that the only people who have access to information within the business are people that need access to that information. The employee factor is the big difference with the business. And so it's in terms of the multi-layered security, you want to have that, but also training is critical for employees. A lot of the attacks that happen in terms of identity fraud on businesses, they happen through employees. Employees may give out information inadvertently. They're very vulnerable to social engineering attacks, phishing attacks. And so making sure that your employees are trained on security and not giving out information that they shouldn't give out is very important in terms of mitigating your risk at a business. There's actually a story that came out this Christmas about a major technology company. Everyone has heard of them. They have 9,000 employees. And so their security department sent out an email to all the employees telling them that they could get a bonus if they just filled out some personal information on a web page. And it was information that you wouldn't want to be out there. And what they found is that 500 of the 9,000 employees, it's about 5%, a little more than 5%, actually fell for this scam and provided their personal information. So can you imagine if that had been a malicious email? You can send, emails can be sent to a company's employees from outside, right? Someone had sent that email to the company's employees and been a bad actor and actually asked for things like their password to log into the company's systems, it could have resulted in a major intrusion, could have resulted in a data breach. And so it's important to make sure that your people are aware of some of these issues as well. And then finally, you may want to consider a comprehensive business identity protection service. And the key there is that you want to make sure that you get a service that can monitor your EIN and your DUNS numbers and your business credit report, because that's where a lot of the risk is. Next slide, please. So finally, the first two elements are important, because if you have a breach of your business, that could affect whether someone's able to access your customers' data. Same thing with your personal data. I mean, if you have your personal email, the same as your business email, and your personal email is hacked, your entire business could be vulnerable, including the customer data. But just looking at the customer data, the first thing is you want to understand your business obligations under the data privacy regulations. What are you actually responsible for with respect to customer data? And then you conduct an audit of personnel access to all data. So you just want to look at, within your employee base, who actually needs to have access to customer data. It's probably a very small subset of your employees. Most of them probably do not need access to customer data. And so if you do that audit, you can find that out. You can actually design your internal systems so that only the people who need to have access to that data have access to it. You also may want to look at conducting a third-party security audit. One thing about processes is that often they become kind of etched in stone. If your business has been around for 10 years, you have existing processes, the people that are there know the processes, they're comfortable with them, but there may be some security flaws. And if you have a third party come and take a look and do a security audit of your entire system, your entire business, very often they'll find flaws in your existing processes that you couldn't be aware of, just because you're so comfortable and then things are working the way they are. But you want to take a look just to make sure that that you're mitigating the risk with respect to customer data and these new requirements. Another big thing is collecting only the minimum and necessary customer data. It's so easy to collect data on customers. If you go and you develop an app, there's so much data that can be captured with a mobile app. You can capture location data, you can capture contacts, you can grab everything off that phone, and people will give it to you if it looks like it's going to benefit them from a convenience standpoint. But then if you grab all that data, you're responsible for actually securing that. And depending on how much data it is, it could be fairly onerous to have to secure all that data, and there may be risk with retaining some of the data that you don't even really need. So take a look at whether you need all the customer data that you're grabbing. When customer data is no longer needed, destroy it. There's no need to keep data around if maybe the customer has terminated their account or whatever the situation may be. A lot of the data breaches that you see, they happen in cases where it's old data that was maybe archived. And so because it was archived, it was maybe moved somewhere else because of space, and so the location that it was moved to is not as secure. And that relates to the next bullet. You want to have a plan to store and secure your collected data, and that should include backup security. You want to make sure that after you've taken a system backup, are your backups secure? Many of the data breaches that have happened, they're not actually hitting the main system. They're just going and they'll hit the backup system or the storage. Maybe there's a directory on an old server that's way out of the way and it has all the backups for the past 5 years. So we'll just grab the backups. The backups have the data also. And then finally, you want to make cybersecurity part of your company culture. Just try and make sure that people are always thinking about how it's not just a matter of storing the data, but securing it as well, especially when it comes to the customer data, because it's a business obligation now that you have to secure that. And that's it. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Hey, Malcolm, thank you very much for that. I've been getting texts and emails from people just saying how incredible the presentation is. And so we're certainly going to have you back here soon to do something else with us, man. I really, really appreciate that. I got to tell you, I probably couldn't get past the Alexa-driven toilet. You know, that was like, it was like in the beginning of, I was like, wait, That
Yeah,
doesn't make sense, but you're right. We
yeah,
are
that's
in that
very
area,
strange.
and the fact that 2/3 of folks, you know, I don't know if you said it didn't matter or they really didn't care about privacy. That surprises me as well. Although I would imagine their definition of privacy would help them to probably reconsider that. Again, thank you very much. I forgot to
No
announce at
problem.
the beginning if folks had questions, and I apologize for that, to send it to our chat or the Q&A function. But we will take a moment. And Jennifer, if you don't mind, do you mind talking about Data Privacy Day for a moment here, in concert with what Malcolm was presenting? And maybe by that time, people will have a question or two that they can put into function. So Jennifer, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelvin and Malcolm. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cook. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And I just wanted to briefly remind everyone that Data Privacy Day is coming up on January 28th. Data Privacy Day, for those who don't know, is an international effort every year that generates awareness about the importance of privacy and highlights easy ways to protect personal information, and also reminds organizations that privacy is good for business. This year, NCSA is encouraging all individuals to own your privacy by learning more about how to protect your valuable data online, and encouraging businesses to respect privacy, which advocates for holding organizations responsible for keeping personal information safe. There are a lot of great ways to get involved in Data Privacy Day. A link to learn more is at the bottom of the slide on our website, staysafeonline.org. But if you're looking to get involved, we highly encourage you to become a Data Privacy Day champion, where you'll receive a toolkit of materials, social media posts and graphics, a template press release, and PowerPoint slides, as well as many other resources to help you in your Data Privacy Day campaign. And also, in honor of Data Privacy Day, we'll host our signature event with our partners at LinkedIn. This year, we'll be talking about data privacy in an era of global change, where privacy experts from industry, from government, from nonprofits will talk about privacy through the lens of kind of all the changes and current events we've seen in 2020. It's free to attend, but registration is required. The link is on the screen, and you can also go to our website to learn more. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kelvin and Malcolm to answer any questions. Thank you all again so much. And again, if you're interested in learning more about Data Privacy Day or Cybersecure My Business, our contact information is on the slide. You can email us at info@staysafeonline.org.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Really appreciate that. I think we lost Malcolm for a second here, but we will look at, Jen, I don't have access, maybe I do, to the Q&A. Do you have any questions coming in from your end?
It looks like we have one question that's come in that says, wouldn't you recommend using a complex passphrase even though you could use a complex password?
Yeah, you know what? I can take that for Malcolm. I think oh, there it is. Would you recommend using a complex passphrase even though I would? Yeah, and Malcolm, we have a question here about passphrase. Malcolm, we have a question here about passphrase versus password versus a complex password. I think they're both great. Passphrases, in my opinion, a little easier to remember, perhaps. But Malcolm, I'll turn that question over to you. Would you recommend using a complex passphrase even though you could use a complex password?
I would definitely recommend password. The phrase is going to have words in it, have actual words.
Yeah.
And so that would be easier to guess. I would go with the password.
Very nice. Okay, cool. And I think,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Malcolm.
No, I was just going to say that it's a big issue in terms of passwords, because very often a strong password is hard to remember. And so there have been studies that have indicated that when the password is too strong and changed too frequently, that people will do things that actually reduce security, like write the password down and put it in their desk drawer, or put it on a post-it on their monitor, things which are bad for security. And so it's kind of, I mean, I think it's evolving in terms of how we'll actually secure things going forward. But yeah, I would definitely choose password over passphrase.
Cool. Thank you, Malcolm. Appreciate that. And I think, hey, Philip, thank you for that question. You know, so, and I think that's it in terms of questions. Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. There were not any other questions that that have come in. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great, great. Malcolm, again, thank you so very much. I want to thank Generali for, again, always being such great partners with us. You know, we look forward to, again, doing some great things in 2021. I forgot to mention our great folks at ITSP Magazine, always walking with us as partners to put these events on, and certainly Trend Micro, you know, a signature sponsor. Really excited to have them on this call as well. Malcolm, you actually doing your talk gave me so many great ideas. We have another, many of you may remember Daniel Elliott, who was director of Cybersecurity My Business. Well, now we have a new director. Daniel has gone on to a new opportunity. We wish him well. But we have a new director, Zamina Wasim, who's going to be taking over this program and taking it to another level, I know for sure. And so Zamina and I look forward to partnering with all of you as we go into the new year. Again, thank you very much. We're going to give you back 8 minutes here of your day. Malcolm, appreciate you. Look forward to working with you in the new year.
All right. Thank you very much. It's been great. Thank you for putting this on. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. See you, everyone.